So that's kind of been my life the last year. It's been a lot of traveling, a lot of filming, a lot of shooting, a lot of hanging out with friends. And that's kind of what, I know that sounds like that's not a realistic goal, but if you really focus on what you want your life to be about, and you choose to make that a priority instead of money or status or whatever you want it to be, that's really what makes all the difference. So today's presentation is called Creating a Job You Love. I have been really lucky and really blessed that both jobs I've had post-college have been positions created specifically for me. I really wasn't interested in fitting into a job description, so I've continually made my own. So that's kind of what this is. I'm going to have you guys for just 5 minutes fill out this ad-lib, or Mad-lib, sorry. You can fill it out on your phone. You can take a picture of it and write, but I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and you have to fill this out to the best of your ability with your answers. And we will do some fun, engaging activities in 5 minutes. Okay, while the last of you are finishing up, this is going to require your participation. I have some lovely prizes up here for those who feel like sharing, but can I have like 1 or 2 people be willing to share what they wrote down? There's no right or wrong answers. It's completely up to you and what you want your life to look like. For a blow pop of flavor of your choice. Go. You'll go second. Do I have someone who will go first? How about I go first and then you go second? Deal? Okay. I wasn't going to have you do something that I wasn't comfortable doing. So I quite literally made this up last night. But my greatest fear when I grew up and entered the workplace was that I was going to be unfulfilled. I was going to be doing something that was making money for someone else and had nothing to do with what I was creative or passionate about. It made me feel like I was going to be bored, controlled, and stuck in a rut, like I kind of talked about. A lot of 9-to-5s are going to say, not even 9, be here at 8, take your lunch break from noon to 1, you can leave at 5. And that idea just quite literally, still thinking about it, gives me a tightness in my chest. I did not want to be not in charge of my own life. As you could see at the beginning of the video, I really like to travel. I really like to spend time with friends and family. My dogs were the 2 Aussies, and they are quite literally my life. I watched a real baby, and I will inform you that the dogs were way cooler than that baby. Best case scenario, my career will be full of great people, meaningful work, and priorities that match mine. So far, like I said, being in the position that I'm in and being able to write job descriptions and create jobs that are pertinent to me and my strengths, I feel like I have nailed that 2 for 2. And it was really important to me to prioritize my time, flexibility, and my growth in my career and lifestyle. Those are 3 things that I think always are important. They don't necessarily have to be important to you, but they are important to me. So that kind of was my Mad Lib. What have you got?
Do I need to stand up?
Sure.
You got the spirit.
I put that my greatest fear when I grow up is that I'll be like struggling with finances because it makes me feel I just like don't want to be stressed out or worried, and I don't want to be scared of like not being able to like put food on the table. Best case scenario is that my career will be full of friends and a lot of traveling, doing what I like, and just like going to see different places, and a lot of success hopefully. It's important for me to prioritize myself, like my mental health. Like I need to be happy with what I'm doing, or else I'm not gonna like enjoy life, obviously. Yeah. My family, because they're important to me, and then my future, because like I don't want to like be in a job that's not gonna take care of me when I'm working for them 5 years down the road. So yeah.
Very good. Cherry, grape, or green apple? Sorry, I ate all the watermelons in my house.
Oh, okay, I'll take a cherry, please.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, that's okay. You'll have opportunity to share later. So with that kind of in the back of your mind in the video, these are just kind of some lessons that I've learned along the way. None of them are like backed up by science. This is kind of just my experiences and what I've learned. So the first one where I'm going to kind of dive into is don't settle. Kind of like you just shared, it can be very scary to get into the job market and know that you just, at the end of the day, bottom line is you have to make money to live, right? Like if you want to have a house, if you want to have food, if you want to have your basic needs met, you've got to have a job. And so when I was in college, I took a job interview with this company called Flywheel. They're an amazing company in Omaha. They've won Best Workplace like multiple years in a row. Very innovative, very cool company culture. They take care of their employees. And they offered a lot of flexibility. So I was super excited when they had a social media position open up when I was a senior in college. And I took the interview thinking there was no way I was going to get it. I felt like I was underqualified. But I went into the interview and had a blast. The people were great. All of the HR and marketing managers were amazing. They took me out to lunch. They let me have a tour of the space. They showed me some of the content they've been creating. I was super excited. But the interview itself was 3 hours long. And I remember going home and taking the longest nap of my life because I had been so inundated with information, so inundated with what are your skills, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what do you want to do in 5 years, what's your flexibility, what's your schedule. And at the end of the interview, I was kind of like, phew, I hope I don't get this job, because it felt really, it just didn't sit right with me. Like, nothing was wrong with the company, nothing is still wrong with Flywheel. It's one of, I would argue, one of the best companies to work for in Omaha right now. It's just, I felt like at the end of the day, I was going to be stuck in that rut. I was going to be coming in, doing the same thing over and over and over again. And so luckily, I did not get the job. I did a phone interview, I did the in-person interview, and then I didn't get it. And it was a really cool moment where kind of fate and what I thought was supposed to happen lined up. And when I got the call that I didn't get it, I wasn't even bummed. I was like, whew, crisis averted. Now we got to figure something else out, which eventually led me to going to the Nita Spring Conference with Strive, not even for an internship, kind of just like for the day to hang out. And that was kind of the beginning of all that. That's when Taylor Siebert approached me and said, hey, we don't necessarily have a need for marketing or social media, but we do have a need for a website designer. Is that something you can do? Absolutely not. I could not do that, but I told him yes. And and I just learned, right? Like you just have to be willing to learn and to grow and to put yourself in uncomfortable situations, even if you think that's not necessarily the right fit for you. But if it's the right people and it's the right, work environment, learning something new can be really exciting. In fact, I told him that day that I really didn't care what I did, even if it was scooping elephant poop. If I was with the right people, at the end of the day, I would probably be happy with my job. So I could have settled for Flywheel. I could have settled for Buildertrend. I could have settled for Mutual of Omaha. All amazing companies, amazing benefits, amazing payrolls. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't have been serving myself or my passions. And so I decided to go a different route. I got married and started working an internship with Strive, which was wild because, when you're married, you're supposed to have that consistent schedule, that 9 to 5 kind of outlook on life, and that just didn't fit. So it might have been a little bit scary, but I didn't settle, and in the end, it paid off. So the next thing that I kind of learned goes towards my A Productions story and how that all got started. The hardest part of doing anything is starting, and there's really 2 ways to look at this, and it comes with the emphasis on how you phrase it. Oh wait, get out of your own way. I'm jumping ahead. So getting out of your own way really is more about believing in yourself. A Productions got started because a friend of mine had seen kind of like the video you guys just saw. I was traveling. I was filming on a GoPro and my iPhone and just putting it together in iMovie and picking a copyrighted song and putting it out for the world to see. And she had seen those and asked me to shoot her wedding. And I said, Kirsten, I'm not shooting your wedding on a GoPro and my iPhone. Like, that's not fair to you. I'm not going to do that to you. And so I told her no originally. And along with working with Strive, I was learning a ton of new things about camera equipment. Ben Mohorn had said, why don't you get a Pocket Osmo, which was just a little, literally teeny tiny camera that just had a gimbal on it, and it at least had stabilization in 1080 HD, which was more than a GoPro did at the time. And so I bought one of those, and I ended up borrowing my grandmother's 60D Canon to shoot this wedding. So once I had kind of had this hodgepodge of equipment, I messaged Kirsten back and was like, look, I came up with the equipment. If you're still interested in a videographer, I'll shoot your whole wedding day for $300. And she took it, and so that's kind of how it got started. I was underprepared, I was underqualified, but I got out of my own way. Like, I could have The only person telling me I couldn't do it was me. It wasn't like my husband was coming to me and saying, Alyssa, I don't think you should do this. Nobody at work was like, you shouldn't do this. The only person who didn't think I could do it was me. And so as soon as I got out of my own way, it opened up the door to really believe in myself and to put my best foot forward and to continue to try and learn new things. Which brings you to the next point, which, spoiler alert, the hardest part is starting. There's something really scary about the beginning of any project. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of things you don't know how to do. There's a lot of people you don't know. There's a lot of equipment you don't know. But you just have to start, right? Like, the hardest part is starting. From there, you can really get going and kind of start to believe in yourself and try new things and that type of stuff. But once that part is done, like, it's all you. So getting out of your own way and just starting is really the first jump or the first hurdle to kicking off, you know, that career that you might want. So whether it's in photography, marketing, videography, graphic design, social media, like, you just have to believe in yourself. And even if your first attempt isn't the best, it still is that first attempt. And one attempt leads to two attempts leads to 5. And, you know, you start to practice, and it's just that methodology of practice makes perfect. I'm going to show you a couple of examples of my first trailer versus one of this year's trailers. And this is just kind of to hopefully give you a visual representation of what starting looks like versus now. One of them is only a minute, and then I think the second one is like the full video, but we're not going to watch full video because we don't have that kind of time. So this would be the second wedding I ever shot. I did end up buying a Canon 80D, which is like barely better, but whatever. And it was at this, both videos are from the same venue, so that's kind of cool to look back on as well. So yeah, basically to get to that point, I had to eventually start, right? In order to have better quality video, better quality editing, better quality shooting, better quality storytelling, I had to start somewhere. Everybody has to start somewhere, so no duh, your first video project, your first photo project isn't going to be the best you've ever done. Nobody's is. I very rarely show any of my first trailers to my current clients because it doesn't reflect who I am now, because after 3-4 seasons of shooting weddings, I've improved. And that's not necessarily because I've put in a ton of hard work. Obviously, I have worked hard, but it's also just because I've done repetition. So everybody has a baseline. Everybody starts somewhere, and that puts us all on an even playing field. So before you count yourself out or say you can't do something because your first video is not going to be good enough, frankly, that's not true. Everybody's got to start somewhere, and so the hardest part is starting. And then after you start, you just keep going. Which leads to my next point, that there is room for you at the table. Pop quiz for a sucker. How many photographers and videographers do you think there are in the state of Nebraska? 418? Okay, what kind of sucker do you want?
Is that right?
No, you just get a sucker for participating. 20? 500, 5,000. Okay. So us entrepreneurs don't really like to report that we're doing a job to the government, so I couldn't find an actual number. But what I can tell you is that I am in 2 Facebook groups, one titled Nebraska Photographers and another one titled Nebraska Videographers. There's over 4,000 people in those 2 groups. So, yeah, well, that's okay, right? But that's what I mean. I think that some people say there's not room for them in the industry, that there's not room for another photographer, there's not room for another videographer, they don't need one of me because there's already 4,000 people doing it. But that's not the case, because at the end of the day, you bring to the table what only you can offer. And so while I might not be the best videographer in the whole entire state, I still get booked. I have a full schedule next year lined up, over 15 weddings. I have had over 17 shoots this month. Like, there's room for you at the table even when you don't think there is. So again, it goes back to getting out of your own way and believing that you can do what only you can do. And if you believe that, then what you have to bring to the table matters. There's also a never-ending client list. Like, if you think about how many people, Hunter, how many marketing gigs do you get throughout the year? And how many are from different clients? A lot. There's a never-ending client list. People are always going to get married. People are always going to have babies. People are always going to be putting on sporting events. Companies are always going to be launching new products. There is quite literally an infinite amount of opportunities for you if you just get out of your own way. Stop comparing yourself. This has been one of the hardest things for me, especially being someone whose work is so creative, and when there are 4,000 other people doing the exact same thing as me. And when I say stop comparing yourself, you guys probably hear that a lot. You hear it at school, you hear it in athletics, you hear it all the time, but I quite literally mean stop. And by that, I mean I don't follow any photographers or videographers on any of my feeds that make me feel less than, right? There's like the YouTube vloggers, there's the top tier wedding videographers who have cinema cameras and FPV drones that fly 90 miles an hour, and elopement videographers and elopement photographers. I personally don't put any of that content on my feed, not because they make me mad. Well, they do make me mad, but not because I don't want to see their work or because I don't want to learn or grow from them. Is because since I don't have a personal connection with those creators, all their content does is make me feel bad about myself. It makes me question my abilities. It makes me question my callings. It makes me question my editing style, my photo style. And at the end of the day, just like I said in our last point, you can bring what only you can bring to the table. And I define success as getting booked once a year. And so the fact that I have 15 weddings lined up for next year is above and beyond what I even thought I could do. And so I personally choose to not follow people that make me feel small or make me feel insignificant. And instead, I surround myself with people who do work that I know personally and that I can connect with and get tips and touch points and referrals. And I'd rather have a network of creators that care about me than that just care about my content. And so I try to keep all of that stuff off my feed. It's not worth it to put that kind of pressure on yourself because everybody has to start somewhere. And so I might not have a cinema camera because I've only been shooting for 4 years. So why would I compare myself to someone who's been shooting for 10? We're not on the same playing field. We're not the same person. We're not the same creator. So there's no reason to count myself out just because I haven't been doing something as long as someone else. And with that, I think that it comes down to believing that what you bring to the table is the best you can offer, right? Like my goal is not to be the best photographer in the United States of America. It's not even to be the best photographer in the Midwest. It's not to be the best photographer in Nebraska. I instead look at what is the best version of myself, and based on that, what is the best product that I can put forward. So I don't have this memorized, so excuse me for looking at my notes, but instead I strive to be the best photographer who is a 26-year-old female creative in the greater Missouri Valley, Iowa area with an emphasis on weddings and seeing people. That's something that only I can offer. Sure, there's a ton of Missouri Valley, actually that's not true. There's a ton of Omaha photographers, there's a ton of Omaha videographers, but they're not a 26-year-old female living in Iowa who specializes in weddings and telling people stories and seeing who they really are at the moment. And so when you look at it from that perspective of just putting your best foot forward, your pressure to create something that compares to everyone else goes away because you're only competing with yourself, and that should inspire you to just put your best foot forward. And your best should be enough because your best is your best. And I know that seems like so cliche and so shallow, but if you really think about it, your best foot forward really just means that that product can't be offered anywhere else. And lastly, I kind of touched on it a little bit more with the comparing yourselves, but curate creatives, not competition. Comparison syndrome is very real, especially with social media. And again, there being 4,000 of us supposedly doing the same thing. So rather than looking at all 4,000 of those people as competition and people who are trying to take away from my business or take away from what I'm trying to do, I instead flip the switch and focus on curating creatives. So like I mentioned before, I've surrounded myself with a lot of people who believe in what I have to offer. And in the industry, we would be considered competition because it's Megan Rowe, Ben Mohorn, Dante, and my friend Grammy, and we all shoot weddings, and we all shoot commercial, and we all shoot marketing, right? Like, we should all technically be fighting for the same gigs because we're doing the same thing. But instead, they believe the same thing I do, that we're better together, and that by working together and sharing ideas and collaborating on our projects and asking for constructive criticism and asking for feedback and double checking my work and pushing me to try new things, pushing me to buy new equipment, teaching me how to do all these things better, I have now gotten 5 professionals in the industry who are now feeding into my business while I'm feeding into theirs. And that has made all the difference. It ups your referrals, it ups your skills, it ups your knowledge, it ups your abilities. And it just makes this niche of industry feel a lot less intimidating when you have people that you know that are in your corner, that are not constantly trying to tear you down, that are not constantly picking apart your work to try and steal a client from you. But that has definitely made all the difference. And it's really hard in a niche where gatekeeping is really popular, to not tell people how you edit, to not tell people how you create. But it's made all the difference to me, and I think it speaks volumes to how I've been able to improve over the years. So that's kind of the 8-ish main lessons I've learned being my own boss, my own entrepreneur, owning my own business. And when I do go to work for others, I know my expectations and what I'm looking for, and so I'm able to continually create jobs that I love and create opportunities that I love, which in turn really creates a life that I love. So